the man who survived 2 atomic bombs. One man walked through 2 nuclear explosions and lived to tell about it. While over 200,000 people died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Tsutomu Yamaguchi saw both bombs drop with his own eyes and somehow made it out alive. This is his story. August 1945. Japan is losing the war. American bombers have already destroyed dozens of cities with firebombs, but nothing could prepare the world for what was about to happen. The United States had just finished building the most powerful weapon ever created by humans. They called it the atomic bomb, and a 29-year-old engineer named Tsutomu Yamaguchi was about to experience something no other person in history would survive twice. Yamaguchi worked for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries as a ship designer. In the summer of 1945, his company sent him on a business trip to Hiroshima. The city was one of the few major Japanese cities that hadn't been bombed yet, which actually made people nervous. They knew it was only a matter of time. Yamaguchi had been in Hiroshima for 3 months, working on designs for new oil tankers. By early August, his work was finally done. He was supposed to leave on August 6th and return home to his wife and young son in Nagasaki. That morning, he woke up excited. He would finally see his family again after months away. He packed his bags and headed out with 2 colleagues. They were walking to the Mitsubishi shipyard one last time to grab some final documents before catching their train. It was a beautiful summer morning, clear blue sky, the kind of day that makes you happy to be alive. The air raid sirens had gone off earlier that morning, but they stopped. That meant the danger had passed, or so everyone thought. At exactly 8:15 a.m., Yamaguchi was walking through a potato field near the shipyard. He realized he had forgotten his personal seal stamp back at the office. In Japan, these stamps are important for official documents. He was about to turn back when he looked up at the sky. A single B-29 bomber was flying overhead. That seemed strange. American bombers usually came in huge groups when they wanted to attack a city. Why was there only one plane? Before he could think about it any longer, he saw something fall from the aircraft. A small parachute. Then a blinding flash of light filled the entire sky. What happened next is hard to put into words. Yamaguchi said later that it felt like the sun had fallen from the sky and exploded right in front of his face. The light was so bright that it temporarily blinded him. Then came the heat. A wave of thermal radiation hotter than the surface of the sun swept across the city at the speed of light. His face and arms started burning immediately. His skin bubbled and peeled. The left side of his body was completely exposed to the blast. Then the shockwave hit. The force of the explosion threw him through the air like a piece of paper in a hurricane. He flew several meters and landed hard in an irrigation ditch. His eardrums ruptured from the pressure. Everything went dark. When he came to, he couldn't hear anything. His ears were ringing so loud that all other sounds were muffled. He looked around, confused and disoriented. The potato field where he had been standing just seconds ago was completely gone, burned away. In its place was scorched earth and flames. He touched his face and felt the damaged skin. Parts of it came off in his hands. His arms were covered in severe burns, but he was alive. Somehow, being in that ditch when the shockwave hit had saved his life. If he had been standing up, the force would have torn him apart. Yamaguchi stood up slowly. His legs were shaking. The world around him looked like something from a nightmare. Buildings were flattened. Fires were spreading everywhere. The air was filled with dust and smoke so thick you could barely see 10 feet ahead. And then he heard the screaming. People were staggering through the streets like zombies. Their skin was hanging off their bodies in sheets. Their clothes had been burned away. Many of them were asking for water. Some were so badly burned that you couldn't tell if they were men or women. Children were crying for their parents. Mothers were searching for their children. The lucky ones had died instantly in the blast. The ones who survived the initial explosion were now suffering in ways that are almost impossible to imagine. Yamaguchi wanted to help them, but he could barely walk himself. He had to find his 2 colleagues. Were they still alive? He stumbled through the destroyed city, calling out their names. The heat from the fires was intense. Buildings were collapsing around him. He passed bodies. So many bodies. Some were burned beyond recognition. Others looked almost peaceful, as if they had simply fallen asleep and never woken up. After searching for what felt like hours, he found both of his colleagues. They were injured but alive. All three of them had survived by pure chance. They knew they had to get out of the city. But how? The trains weren't running. The roads were destroyed. Fires blocked most of the paths. They decided to walk toward the train station anyway, hoping that some trains might still be operating on the outskirts of the city. As they walked, they saw things that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. A mother holding her dead baby, refusing to let go. A line of schoolchildren, all dead, still holding hands. A man sitting against a wall, looking completely normal except for the fact that he was dead with his eyes open. It took them all day to reach the train station. When they finally got there, they found out that some trains were still running on the undamaged tracks outside the city. They climbed aboard a train headed for Nagasaki. Yamaguchi was in terrible pain. His burns were getting worse. He needed medical treatment. But all he could think about was getting home to his family. He needed to warn them about what he had seen. He needed to tell them that the Americans had a weapon that could destroy an entire city in seconds. The train ride took all night. Yamaguchi drifted in and out of consciousness. When he finally arrived in Nagasaki on August 7th, his wife barely recognized him. His face was swollen and covered in bandages. His skin was burned and blistered. He looked like he had been through hell, because he had. His wife took care of his wounds as best she could. He told her everything. He described the flash of light, the heat, the shockwave, the destroyed city, the dead and dying people everywhere. She listened in horror. She couldn't believe that a single bomb could cause so much destruction. It didn't seem possible. Yamaguchi told her that they needed to be careful. If the Americans could do that to Hiroshima, they might do it to other cities too, maybe even Nagasaki. But surely lightning wouldn't strike twice. What were the chances? On August 8th, Yamaguchi stayed home to rest. His burns were serious, and he was weak from radiation exposure, though he didn't know that's what it was at the time. Nobody did. The concept of radiation sickness was completely new. By August 9th, he felt well enough to go to work. He needed to report to his superiors at the Mitsubishi shipyard. He needed to tell them what happened in Hiroshima. So despite his injuries, despite his wife's protests, he went to the office that morning. At 11 a.m., Yamaguchi was sitting in his office at the Mitsubishi shipyard in Nagasaki. He was explaining to his supervisor what had happened in Hiroshima. His boss was having trouble believing the story. One bomb that destroyed an entire city. It sounded like propaganda or exaggeration. How could one bomb do what usually took hundreds of bombers? Yamaguchi was insisting that it was true when suddenly, through the office window, he saw it again. That same bright flash of light. That same sun falling from the sky brightness. He screamed and dove under a desk. His coworkers thought he had lost his mind. Then the building exploded. Windows shattered. Walls cracked. The ceiling caved in. The shockwave from the second atomic bomb hit Nagasaki with the same devastating force that had hit Hiroshima 3 days earlier. Yamaguchi was thrown across the room. Once again he found himself buried in rubble, ears ringing, covered in dust and debris. Once again, he had somehow survived a nuclear explosion. The odds of this happening once were already incredibly small. The odds of it happening twice to the same person were astronomically impossible. And yet here he was. When he climbed out of the destroyed building, he saw the same horrific scene he had witnessed in Hiroshima. The mushroom cloud rising into the sky, the fires spreading through the city, the people with their skin hanging off, wandering around in shock. Except this time it was his hometown. This time it was happening to his neighbors, to people he knew. And somewhere in this chaos were his wife and infant son. Yamaguchi ran. His burns were still healing from Hiroshima. His body was weak from radiation exposure, but none of that mattered. He had to find his family. He ran through streets filled with fire and destruction. He climbed over rubble. He pushed past injured people who were begging for help. He felt guilty for not stopping, but he had to find his wife and child. He had to know if they were alive. His house was damaged but still standing. The bomb had exploded about 3 kilometers away, farther than the Hiroshima bomb had been from him. When he burst through the door, he found his wife and son alive. They were injured but alive. His wife had been blown out of the house by the blast. Their son had been thrown across the room, but they had survived. For the second time in 3 days, Tsutomu Yamaguchi had lived through an atomic bombing. He had experienced both nuclear attacks that ended World War II. He had seen the power of these weapons with his own eyes, twice. And somehow, impossibly, he was still breathing. But surviving the blast was only the beginning. The radiation exposure from both bombs would affect him for the rest of his life. In the days after the Nagasaki bombing, his hair fell out. His wounds wouldn't heal properly. He developed a fever that wouldn't break. His gums bled constantly. These were all symptoms of acute radiation sickness, though doctors in 1945 didn't fully understand what they were dealing with. Many of the people who survived the initial blasts died in the weeks and months that followed. Their bodies simply couldn't handle the radiation damage. Yamaguchi's wife also got sick from radiation exposure. She lost her hair too. Their infant son was affected as well. The 3 of them had all been exposed to dangerous levels of radiation in Nagasaki, and Yamaguchi had received a double dose from Hiroshima. By all logic, he should have died, but he didn't. Week after week, month after month, he held on. His body slowly began to recover. His hair grew back. His burns healed, leaving scars. His strength returned. Against all odds, Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived both atomic bombings. After the war ended, Yamaguchi went back to work for Mitsubishi. He continued designing ships for many years. He got married again after his first wife passed away. He had children and grandchildren. For decades, he rarely talked about what happened to him in August 1945. The memories were too painful. Japan was trying to rebuild and move forward. Nobody wanted to dwell on the horrors of the war. But as he got older, Yamaguchi realized that he had a responsibility to speak out. He was a living witness to the most destructive weapons ever used in war. He had seen their effects up close, not once, but twice. In his later years, he became an outspoken advocate against nuclear weapons. He gave speeches and interviews. He visited schools to talk to students. He wanted young people to understand what nuclear war really means. Not just statistics and numbers, but the actual human suffering. The burned bodies, the destroyed cities, the families torn apart, the long-term health effects that lasted for generations. He said that experiencing one atomic bombing was terrible, but experiencing 2 gave him a unique perspective. He could confirm that it wasn't just a one-time accident or a fluke. These weapons were designed to cause maximum destruction and suffering, and they succeeded. The Japanese government officially recognized Yamaguchi as a survivor of both bombings in 2009, making him the only person in history to hold that distinction. There were other people who were in both cities, but none who were close enough to both blasts to be officially recognized as survivors of both. Yamaguchi lived until 2010, passing away at the age of 93. He died of stomach cancer, likely caused by the radiation exposure from both bombs. But he lived far longer than anyone expected. He survived 65 years after being exposed to nuclear radiation twice in 3 days. His story is almost unbelievable. The chances of being in Hiroshima when the first bomb dropped were already slim. The chances of then returning home to Nagasaki just in time for the second bomb were even slimmer. The chances of surviving both explosions and living to be 93 years old were so small that it seems like a miracle. But it happened. Tsutomu Yamaguchi walked through 2 nuclear explosions and lived to tell the world about it. His message was simple. Nuclear weapons should never be used again. He had seen what they could do. He had felt their heat and power. He had watched cities full of innocent people disappear in an instant. And he spent the rest of his long life making sure that the world never forgot, because he was there. He saw it happen, twice, and he survived to warn us all. Subscribe for more incredible stories from history.